Hey everyone, Kane here today, and I am pleased to bring you the first part of the series regarding lore and the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Today we're going to start off by taking a general overview look at the Imperium of Man, and I really thought a lot how I want to present this information because it can be a lot, so give it the best treatment as possible. I've broken it up into smaller segments. The Imperium is a very large and very old galactic empire. As for those who are more current on Warhammer 40,000, if you're watching this, the information presented will be set before the 8th edition or Dark Imperium edition. I'll be detailing what happened after the coming of the Great Rift in a later video, but for now, we're just going to go with that time frame. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So, the Imperium of Man is the largest galaxy-spanning empire ever created. It's been around for roughly 10,000 years, and from the homeworld of humanity, known as Terra, in this universe, the Emperor set out to create his domain and free humanity from the shackles of alien oppression and blind religious dogma. However, the Imperium as it is today is a far, far cry from what the Emperor envisioned 10,000 years ago. It has become a bleak, bloody regime that rules through fear and superstition, rather than being a beacon of reason and enlightenment. Individual human life has no meaning, and is viewed as just a number to be consumed by the Imperial machine to ensure its survival. However, before we can get into the meat and bones of the Imperium, there is something we need to understand first, and we need to briefly discuss the warp, which is a parallel dimension to our own, and it plays a significant factor in how the Imperium exists and some of the challenges the Imperium faces. So we're going to go ahead and just cover that very briefly. There'll be a more extensive look at this when we go into Chaos and the Dark Gods, but for now, we're just going to kind of do a brief overview. Now, the warp, like I said, is a parallel dimension to our own. It lies just beneath the surface of reality. The laws of time and space have no bearing on how the warp works, and it is home to entities commonly called demons. Demons are usually the coalescence of a bunch of human emotions, typically those of darker nature such as murder, lust, things of that sort. And this births a sentient being. Now, since demons don't get born in a way that is natural, they're sometimes referred to also as the neverborn. And demons have a hunger for souls. It really doesn't matter what race you belong to, you got a soul, the demon wants to devour it. That's pretty much how they function, and they are a dangerous threat to all life in the universe, particularly with races that have psychers or psychics among their number. Now, ruling over this realm are 4 dark gods, and they are the epitome of all these emotions, and each one usually represents a certain aspect. We will definitely be covering them more later, like I said, but we're not really going to get into that much at this point. Really, all you gotta take away from this is that the warp is a very, very dangerous place, and humanity, therefore the Imperium, is forced to rely upon it, and we'll explore why shortly. Now, as far as the imperial hierarchy or organization of its government, the Imperium was founded by the Emperor. However, not much is really known about this guy. We don't know much about his past, or anything really prior to what's known as the Unity Wars, which he led to bring Terra under his rule. What is known about the Emperor is that he is the most powerful human psychic on record, and he also had incredible strength, speed, and agility. His intelligence was also unmatched, and he appears to be immortal. No one knows how old he really is, and he's been alive in some form of fashion for well over 10,000 years. But the Emperor was, 10,000 years ago, mortally wounded at the end of a bloody civil war known as the Horus Heresy, and he was confined to a device known as the Golden Throne, which is an intricate life support device that has kept the Emperor in a half-living state, but he cannot leave the throne. He cannot go into the wider Imperium. He is confined to it, he can't leave it, but he is still able to perceive things through his psychic abilities, but very rarely can he act on them. Now, since the Emperor's internment in the Golden Throne, a ruling council has led the Imperium in its stead, and this ruling council is called the High Lords of Terra. There are 12 High Lords in Terra, and each one represents their own branch or division of the Imperial government, basically. These High Lords, while they don't focus on the day-to-day operations or functions of the Imperium, they do make decisions on critical matters that can have consequences for the entire Imperium. We will be going into more detail about the High Lords and the individual branches of government in a later video, but for now, we just need to view them as pretty much they're the de facto rulers of the Imperium, and essentially enforce the law the Emperor passed on his behalf. Now, the Imperium itself is broken up into 5 different segments, or segmentums. They are the Segmentum Solar, Segmentum Obscurus, Segmentum Pacificus, Segmentum Tempestus, and the Ultima Segmentum. Each segmentum has a command structure and command fortress with which the decrees of the High Lords pass through and are enacted. The segmentums are further broken down into sectors, subsectors, and finally individual star systems and planets, each with their own levels of commands and bastions of power. Now, each individual planet is ruled by a planetary governor appointed by the High Lords. Most of the time, governorship falls to a family bloodline, like nobles, and it's just passed down from generation to generation. There are some planets in the Imperium that do have elected officials or elected governors that are approved by the Adeptus Administratum, and it's this branch of government which mainly oversees the minutiae of the functionings and inner working of the imperial government. These kind of governors are not that common. For the most part, as long as the imperial tithe, and this is like taxes or levies, are paid, and order and control is maintained, planets are left to look to their own means. Now we'll be moving on to the religion of the Imperium. And there's a bit of a contradiction, paradox, hypocrisy here. And that's because the Imperium was initially founded on the principle that religion was a falsehood, and religious worship was outlawed. Only what was called the imperial truth, which fostered logic and reason, was allowed. And the Emperor, that's what the whole Imperium was for, and that's what the Emperor preached. He was all about logic and reason. Religion leads to suspicion, fear, and murder, all these other negative things. So, he created this imperial truth. However, the Emperor's unnatural abilities led people to eventually start seeing him as a god. And people took to worshipping him, even creating a hidden religion surrounding him. And this notion that there were people worshipping him horrified the Emperor. He did not want this to happen. He did not want to be treated like a god. He was not a god. And he passed a law that anybody in possession of propaganda proclaiming the Emperor's divinity was executed for treason, particularly a text known as the Lectio Divinatis, which is essentially an early text or Bible worshipping the Emperor, and laid the foundation for the religion that was to come. Unfortunately, once the Emperor was confined to the Golden Throne, and the last of his genetic sons, the Primarchs, died out, this religion blossomed into full fruition across the Imperium. Now, currently, this religion is ruled by the Ecclesiarchy, or Adeptus Ministorum, and this is the ruling body of the religion, and its leader even holds a seat among the High Lords. And any deviation from the Imperial Creed, as it is now called, is viewed with suspicion or declared outright heresy, and people are routinely tortured and executed if not adhering to religious dogma and edicts. Now time to take a look at the military briefly. Now we will be going a lot more in depth into the Imperial's military later on because there are numerous branches and these are the guys that are on the front lines. So we will be discussing them more in depth. But just a general overview of them, we're going to go ahead and cover the main branches and a brief description of what each one does. The military might of the Imperium is made up of primarily 7 different forces. The first and most commonly deployed is the Astra Militarum, or the Imperial Guard. This consists of regiments of normal human troopers provided basic equipment and firepower, in addition to armored vehicles and artillery, and they are deployed across the many war zones that dot the Imperium. Think of these as the common man infantry, like our Marines or Army, things like that. That's what these guys are. Next we have the Adeptus Astartes, or the Space Marines. These are gene-enhanced super soldiers that have provided the best armor, weapons, and technology the Imperium has to offer. They are far fewer in number than the Astra Militarum and are generally only deployed to war zones that are deemed of absolute critical importance to the Imperium. Interesting thing to note with the Adeptus Astartes is no one commands them. They fight according to their own code, their own beliefs, and their own guiding compass. Other Imperial institutions can request Astartes forces to intervene in a war zone, but they are under no obligation to do so if it is not within their overall goals to intervene. Next up we have the Adeptus Sororitas, or Sisters of Battle. This fighting force is made up entirely of females who are wholly dedicated to worshipping the Emperor and prosecuting wars of faith against enemies. They are the military arm of the ecclesiarchy, and they regularly protect and defend worlds deemed to be of important religious value. There's also the Adeptus Mechanicum, or Tech Priests of Mars. Now, the Tech Priests are responsible for the creation of technologies for the Imperium and also provide the industry necessary for the Imperium to survive, whether it be in resources, harvesting, processing, creating instruments of war, ships. If it's manufactured, then generally the Tech Priests of Mars are involved, and they have their own military force to protect their interests. Then we have the Inquisition. The Inquisition is a shadowy group that has pretty much unlimited authority to hunt down and eliminate any threats to the Imperium, both internal and external. Think CIA with absolutely unlimited reach, range, and power to do whatever they want. Then we have, of course, the Imperial Navy. And this is the combined arm that represents the collective strength of the Imperium's warships. Every sector, every subsector, every segmentum has its own designated fleet, and every area has their own Imperial Navy command, as well as their own primary ports, fortresses, all of that. Lastly, we have what are known as PDFs, or Planetary Defense Forces. These are planets' first and, honestly, worst line of defense against any and all threats. The majority of PDFs are a citizen militia. They usually get wiped out whenever faced with a serious threat. They're cannon fodder, in the most literal sense. So we won't really be discussing them that much going into later videos, but we will be discussing all the other branches as they are key parts of the Imperium. Now lastly, as I stated at the beginning, the warp does have a part to play. And here is where that comes into play. One thing that's key to the survival of the Imperium is the employment of psychers, which is a sore subject for the Imperium. They view all psychers as a threat that must be contained and eliminated. And there's a reason for it, even though it doesn't mean all psychers are bad. and that is because Psykers draw power from the warp when they use their abilities. And when they do this, it creates a shining beacon for demons that are in the warp. Demons will use Psykers as a doorway to the physical universe by taking possession of an unprotected Psyker's body and mind while devouring their souls. Countless planets have fallen to demonic invasion because of a lone Psyker using their powers without proper training or protection. However, there are Psykers that do have a valuable benefit to the Imperium, and they are given exemption so long as they are properly monitored and trained and provided adequate protection against dangers of the warp. Now, in addition to specially trained and outfitted battle Psykers that serve both the Astra Militarum and the Adeptus Astartes, there are really two main kinds of Psykers that are of benefit to the Imperium: Astropaths and Navigators. Astropaths are the ones that provide the Imperium with the means of interstellar communication, and they do so by projecting psychically imprinted messages through the warp. And they are able to do this because they undergo a ritual known as soul binding. And for this ritual, they are taken to Terra, brought before the Emperor, and exposed to his power, and in return, their ability is amplified exponentially. However, the process does have its drawbacks. It does leave an astropath blind, as their physical eyes are destroyed in the process. They're basically burned out. However, without astropaths, the Imperium would not be able to maintain control over its empire, because it have no way of communicating across it. Now, the second form of Psyker that has value to the Imperium are Navigators. They are both Psykers as well as being mutants, and they especially draw ire from the more puritanical aspects of the Imperium's religion and imperial hierarchy, because it's a dual combo threat. They're Psykers and they're mutants. Now, they possess a special gene that grants them a third eye, which is located in the center of the forehead. This third eye allows a navigator to see into the warp, which allows them to pilot the ships of the Imperium through that dimension. And ships have used warp travel to get across the galaxy in an effective way. It's not the most reliable means because of, as I stated before, the laws of space and time don't apply in the warp. So things can always go wrong, and it's not the most surefire way. However, it is the expedient, effective when compared to other methods available to humanity, which is better than faster than light travel, believe it or not. Now, navigators are able to do this by using a beacon in the warp as a point of reference. And this beacon is called the Astronomicon, and it is powered by the Emperor's psychic might. This does not come without a cost, though, because in order to keep this beacon lit, countless Psykers need to be sacrificed and consumed by the Emperor to boost his reserves of strength. So, because of this critical function that the navigators have, they are protected from that imperial bigotry, and they're treated almost like a necessary evil while also a form of royalty by some. All navigators belong to a noble house. All navigator houses are generally confined to a specific district located on Terra, and they live in mansions and other exquisite surroundings. Okay, so that was a lot of information to cover, and I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. This was just a very general overview of the Imperium, and I will definitely be going more in depth on some of these topics and groups other videos. I do hope you enjoyed this one, and if you did, please hit that like button. And I just got a question: would you want to live in the Imperium with what you know as of now? And if so, would there be a certain area you would like to know more about? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want to be kept up to date on all the upcoming lore videos, please hit that subscribe button, and also follow me on Twitter. Links down in the description below. Also, if you'd like to discuss Warhammer or any gaming in general, feel free to join my Discord as well. Thank you all once again, and I will see you next time in the grim darkness of the far future.